talking about the votes, and we're talking about just there is basic civics of how government works. There's a gap there between. I guess at some point they kind of stopped teaching that in school. A lot of people don't really understand how government works, particularly when it comes to the Electoral College.
Please explain.
Electoral College is so basically we have a system where it's not the person who wins the most votes throughout the United States that is the president. What happens is all 50 states have a certain amount of electoral votes, and whoever wins the popular vote in that state has a certain amount of electoral votes. So let's say Texas has 43, and I don't know if that's the exact number, but Texas is a fairly big state.
44.
34.
Yeah,
Right. So whoever wins the popular vote in Texas, they get those 34 electoral votes. Whoever wins Florida gets a certain amount of electoral. And then you have the smaller states like Rhode Island have maybe like 1 or 2 electoral votes. So you have a situation where somebody like Hillary Clinton, which is what happened in 2016, if you count the amount of votes throughout the nation, she had 3 million more people vote for her than Donald Trump. However, using the Electoral College approach, Trump was able to win enough states here and there where it's basically 270 electoral votes is what you need in order to win the presidency. And so it is not, typical democracy where whoever gets the most votes wins. It's because of this EDET Electoral College system. And, so I always thought that system was, ass backwards from the beginning. But come to find out that it is really, if you trace back, it is really a leftover of slavery, right? But so basically, the southern slave states, their slaves the more slaves that they had, it gave them more electoral votes. So you have the northern states that didn't have slavery, but the southern states that did. So when we're counting the population of, say, Texas, and let me just throw out a number. Let's say Texas, let's say the population of, basically only at that time, only white men could vote. So let's say there's a population of 2 million white men who could vote. But then you have your 1 million slaves. The more slaves you have, they count to your population. So even though the slaves can't vote, they're part of your population. So you get more electoral votes because of the amount of slaves that you have. So even if slaves counted at 2/5 of a person for those purposes, but again, so they said you could literally have a situation where a slave, by leaving the South, to go to the North, would lessen the amount of electoral votes that state had. If like enough of them leave to go to the North, then they have less population. So it's really from those times that system still exists. It's a lot of similar things that exist, just pure foolishness. Like voting on a Tuesday. There's something about carrying your crops to market or some nonsense, and these things are still left over. So as bad as so that's the electoral. So if you think about the Electoral College has resulted in George Bush becoming president and Donald Trump. So think about where we would be right now if those two presidencies did not exist. The trillions of dollars we spent on wars since Bush for the last 20 years, we've been fighting these wars that Bush got us into. Everything that has, the thousands of lives, hundreds of thousands of lives lost through Bush, now with Trump and everything going on with him. If we just had a regular democratic system, person with the most votes wins. That it has real severe consequences. And it's actually even worse than I thought. And what, as bad as I thought electoral college system was, I just heard about, they had some constitutional lawyer on TV a few weeks ago talking about what the Trump campaign is trying to do. So basically, you know how we think that who wins the popular vote of a state, they get that state's electoral college votes? It's not mandatory.
No.
It's not, which I did not know. So
last election, that was a result of that.
And again, it's state by state. So what they're trying to do. So here's something that can happen. You could have a situation where, like Ohio, they have a certain amount of electoral college votes, where Trump goes, say Joe Biden win the popular vote in Ohio. So what the Trump campaign, and they started this effort from weeks ago, they can go to the state's electors who are, I think, they're nominated by the state legislature within that state. And they can say, so Trump can say, well, you know what? There's all this fraud with mail-in votes and what have you. So let's disregard the popular vote within our state, and we're just going to give these votes to who we think should get it. So it is not mandatory. That's why I said it's worse than we think. So
does your vote really matter?
So there's a question.
There's a question, yeah.
Any kind of pressure matters, and your vote in overwhelming amounts can at least give the electorate an idea of what direction people want the country to go in. So even if it's a little pressure, right, it still will help to sway some decision. It won't. It might not be the defined decision that we want, but at least it will give them some help, some idea, push them in some direction as to who we want or what political party we want to run this country.
So, is it time for the Electoral College to drop out of school?
Yeah.
Tex, what you say?
This conversation actually brought some other things to mind while you were actually giving your soliloquy.
Like that.
Hey, you know that boy can talk. Stop it. But seriously, let's go back to the slaves being counted as a part of the census, but unable to vote. That's major.
Yes.
Let's think about this.
Yes. Yeah.
The federal government commissioned states to build prisons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do those prisoners count as heads?
I don't know.
Pretty sure
But
I do not know that question.
Do they count?
I don't know that answer. Like in the census?
Persons, but is exactly in the census, but they cannot vote.
They can't vote.
You know what? I'm sure they do count.
Of course they count.
Somebody Google that and tell us. But yeah,
you know what?
They're in the states.
My mind is like all around this right now, so I'm like, okay, thinking, who actually counts as a part of the census that actually builds up the electoral college? Because we and not to say that I'm a firm believer that our vote counts no matter what. The more people we have out there doing their due diligence, doing their research and making informed decisions and getting out there and voting, hey, I'm all for it. At the same time, this is the first time since you brought that up, I'm really thinking about it like, okay, who really counts?
Yep.
You know, as a part of the census. Not as far as voting.
Even if you're illegal, it still counts.
Yeah.
They don't care. During the census, they don't really care about your legal status.
You are just a body within that state.
Right.
It would come to reason that states like Texas, because we're a border of Mexico and we have a lot of people, coming across that might not have the valid paperwork, will be counted as part of the census, but unable to vote. Oh man, we could take this.
But look here. So here's the thing, and Obama in his speech today, he was just talking about, government doesn't make things perfect, but a good government can make things better. And so he listed a whole bunch of things. So in the census specifically, that especially said the census is to count the number of people in the state. Period. Whether you're legal or illegal, it doesn't matter. You're in the state. So one thing that the Trump administration has tried to do, got all sent all the way to Supreme Court, is to put a citizenship question on the census. Right. And so the idea behind that is that somebody who is here illegally, they don't want to fill out anything that says they're not a citizen. So they put that there to say, well, they won't answer it. So they're basically not going to count. So if you have these, 500,000, undocumented immigrants in your community who are afraid to answer the census, then the numbers for that state will be undercounted. So as far as resources and, electoral college votes and whatever else is going to be undercounted. So and there's a lot of similar things that they've done to make people, not want to be on the census. So, there's been a big effort about, fill out the census and really trying to educate people on it. But if you think about you're here illegally and you're not really sure how things work, you don't want to sign on anything and, end up being deported or whatever. So and that got sent all up to the Supreme Court. And they eventually lost it, but those are the things that they tried to do. So
man, look here. Straight up, nobody illegal is filling out nothing that has to do with no census.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let me tell you what them to do then. Because nobody illegal now fill out nothing. When they get the number, just round it up. Whatever number it is, just round it up. Right?
That's probably a felony, especially.
I'm just that is the amount we have. Right? Rounding up is a perfectly good math solution. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, it's a perfectly good solution for maths class in representation of politics. That shit gets you locked up.
We get more electoral votes, and we can win. So that is what they should do. We're recommending that, right?
Yeah. And again, something else that they try to do is also shorten the time for the census to be completed. So it's all these little tricks that they do, man, because the majority of people don't pay attention to this stuff. Over a majority of people don't pay attention to this stuff, and they know that. So they can say, oh, well, the census, you're supposed to have until the end of December, but, for whatever reason, we're going to cut it short. So you have to complete it by, October. You know what I mean? Just because so we can undercount it. You know what I mean? So, man, you have to watch these fools, man.